The Minnesota Golden Gophers have made it through 2 games with 2 victories. But now, this is where the opportunities on the difficult schedule start to kick in. Can they travel over to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and prove to everybody on the national stage that they belong in the national conversation?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
We know that Minnesota has a tough schedule. We talked about it in the preseason, and PJ Fleck has kind of put his own spin on it, saying that this is an opportunistic schedule. It's an opportunity for our team here in Minneapolis to prove that we can go head-to-head with some of these big boys in the Big Ten and in non-conference, and they're going to get that non-conference opportunity taking on a North Carolina team that has one of the very best quarterbacks in all of college football. When you talk about NFL draft prospects that NFL teams are kind of drooling over, Drake Maye is one of those guys that they drool over. And this is going to be a challenge in a lot of different ways for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And the first way that I really want to focus in on is defending Drake Maye in this offense. Of course, Phil Longo was kind of the architect of what North Carolina had been doing with Drake Maye, going back to Sam Howell as well. Of course, we know he's now the offensive coordinator at Wisconsin. So you got this offense maybe looking a little bit different in terms of the leadership and play calling sort of thing on the offensive side of the football. But when Minnesota approaches this game against the Tarheels, Drake Maye, of course, is someone you need to focus on, and you need to try to contain him. I don't think you're going to stop Drake Maye. I think Drake Maye is going to get his in almost every single game that he plays, but you need to try to avoid where things really turn easy for Drake Maye. Things are going to be easy if North Carolina can achieve balance on the offensive side of the football. Running back Maye Hampton rushed for 234 yards and 3 touchdowns against Appalachian State. So if North Carolina can get that run game going, that forces Minnesota to kind of come up a little bit, to be able to kind of key on that run game a little bit. And of course, that opens things up over the top. So you need to find a way to take away that balance. What side of the football are you going to try to take away? You try to take away the run game, Drake Maye might be able to beat you over the top in single coverage. You take away the pass game, Maye Hampton might be able to gut you up the middle for 25-yard runs and 30 and 40-yard runs like he was able to do against Appalachian State. Now, I will say this. Minnesota will be the most difficult defense that North Carolina will have faced this season. And kind of when I look at it on the other side of the coin for Minnesota, I think there's some opportunities going up against this North Carolina defense as well. This was a North Carolina defense that was in triple digits last year, and they bring back some guys on their defense, but there is still momentum. There is still confidence to be gained. I think a big key for the Minnesota Golden Gophers in this game, take advantage of that defense. I think Nebraska, who they played earlier this season, I know they only scored 13 points, but there were some things to kind of take away from that football game that were positives for Minnesota. Nebraska was a much better defense, I think, than what North Carolina. We're really finding out how good of a defense I think Nebraska is truly going to be this year. So what I'm saying is there are opportunities for Minnesota to do some things on the offensive side of the football. When you look at Minnesota, we want to find out, we want to learn what their identity is going to be. I think that's kind of been up in the air right now. What is their identity? Okay, the first game, Ethan Kaliak-Manis and threw it over 40 times against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And then you come out against Eastern Michigan, you run it, one more time, you run the football. Sean Tyler and then the true freshman Darius Taylor really burst on the scene into the run game. How are they going to approach this North Carolina defense? I believe we're going to find this out early on. To me, I think it's the physicality. I think it's the PJ ball that we've seen over the last couple of years that could be a really big key to success and really could be great for Minnesota going forward. Because I think one thing that you have to do, you got to gain the time of possession. You got to win the time of possession. You got to win the line of scrimmage. I think Minnesota can be physical at the point of attack. I think these running backs, Sean Tyler and Darius Taylor, have proved that they can get through the hole, that they can make some plays. All right. I definitely think the Eastern Michigan, you saw a little bit against Nebraska, but once again, I'm going to harp on how good that Cornhuskers defense kind of looks so far. So what are we going to see out of Minnesota? Are they going to look to go to the air a little bit more? You go back to that South Carolina game, Spencer Rattler threw for 353 yards. I believe he was 30 of 39, so he was very efficient, able to find the open receiver. Now, Spencer Rattler might be a little bit more talented than Ethan Kaliakmanis, but there are opportunities, I think, for Minnesota to have one of their best offensive games so far in this young season against the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, we kind of went back to, we talked about before about this North Carolina offense against this Minnesota defense. What do they have to do? They got to try to break North Carolina from achieving balance in this one. There's a spicy matchup, really spicy matchup, when Drake Maye is throwing the football against this Minnesota secondary. Of course, you got one of the best safeties in all of college football back there in Tyler Nubin. Justin Wall, he's a great cover corner. I thought Travion Jones has played pretty good as well. I think he played pretty good against the Nebraska game. So, can Minnesota cover? Okay, North Carolina is down their top 2 wide receivers from last season. If Minnesota can cover good, I don't know if they're going to cover great. I don't know if they're going to lock down the threats on the outside for North Carolina, because they've got a lot of threats. They usually put out 3-4 wide receivers, something like that in the formation. But if they can do good, that allows their front seven to get more time in a pass rush. You let Drake Maye, or I should say you force Drake Maye to go through his second progression, his third progression. If the coverage is good downfield, forcing a lot of checkdowns could be key for this Minnesota defense to get off the field. I thought Appalachian State did a decent job at not allowing a ton of big plays over the top. North Carolina had only 10 points at halftime against Appalachian State, and through about 3.5 quarters, App State was doing pretty good. And I think Minnesota probably has a better defense than the Mountaineers, all due respect, of course, to Appalachian State. But Minnesota, based on what I've seen on film from North Carolina, I think there's some opportunities that maybe they don't have the skill positions. Of course, the Tez Walker thing did not get approved by the NCAA. I think there's opportunities here for Minnesota to maybe do a good job on the outside in coverage against some of these North Carolina weapons. If that can happen, they can maybe get pressure. 6 Golden Gophers so far. 6 Minnesota defenders have at least 1 sack. So there's going to be a lot of different guys that are going to be involved in terms of getting to the quarterback. So send them from different angles, all sorts of different people from different angles to try to confuse this North Carolina offensive line up front. What an opportunity for PJ Fleck and the Minnesota Golden Gophers. The key for them to win is establish the run, establish the line of scrimmage, win the line of scrimmage, keep Drake Maye off of the football field. And if Minnesota is able to go on the road and win against North Carolina, they got games against Northwestern and Louisiana, this could be a 5-0 team when they meet Michigan for the Little Brown Jug later in the season. I am excited. This might be the game that I'm maybe most excited about this weekend. Are you excited for this matchup? How do you think Minnesota can scheme their way to a victory? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.